What's up, everybody? This is Chris from Calling All Gamer, and then shit, I know. Let's do that again.
I just go without, cut it out.
Okay, so how do I start the intro? How would I?
How do what you used to do?
Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa, everybody. This is Chris from Calling All Gamers.
And I'm David. Well, say something, man.
Wait, are you? I thought you were gonna start up.
No, you're gonna start.
All right. Let me sit down then. You gotta edit all this now, dude.
Hell no, this is half the fun. Unscripted stuff.
I guess David has me talking first. Usually I'm the last one. I'm like the closing pitcher, but still on the subject of Street Fighter, but we're going old school on you guys. Back in the 90s. So before Evo, the whole fighting game scene was kind of... They had a thing called Street Fighter Alpha 3 International Champion, but we're talking about Street Fighter 2, such as Street Fighter 2 tournaments. Pretty much, and these were mainly on the West Coast, early 90s, like 91. The entries were like 100 players. Mainly the first one began like in 91 in San Diego, 100 entered, only top 2 won, which was Tomo Ohiro and just Tony. The other one was maybe around 1992, where it was Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. But check it out, because usually what the Japanese always dominate pretty much any fighting game in general. So, you know, these were all American. I mean, I guess they were either Korean or Japanese or Chinese Americans, but they weren't, from overseas. But it looks like 92 James Rometti and Kuni Funara, if I'm not saying that right, but James from Japan and Kunai from James from America and Kunai from Japan. But it's pretty cool because I guess they just kept going with tournaments. It like usually the top players back in the day were Mike Watson, Graham Wolf, what was it? James Choi? Yeah, no, sorry, John Choi, Alex Valle. I think everybody knows Alex Valle is. He's still popular in the scene. He still competes at Evo. I don't know if he has won Evo, but he's gone pretty damn close. Always goes up against the Beast, which is Daigo Umahara. But usually the tournament kept going. The Street Fighter 2 tournament, different variations came out because it was like Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, Hyper Fighting, and then Street Fighter 2. My favorite, Street Fighter 2 Turbo. That was always my favorite. It looks like the last one I just stopped with the tournaments for Street Fighter 2 was around 96, because initially Street Fighter Alpha came into the scene, so that fruition pretty well. People started going Street Fighter Alpha. Usually with those, it was still those same guys that were doing really good, which Alex Valle, Mike Watson, John Choi. Those guys were doing really good. But I think with the Alpha series, we're gonna go and dig in that a little later. But yeah, I don't know. My favorite was always Street Fighter, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. What about you, David? Because there's so many different variations of those.
It's hard to say. I would have to go Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo as well, just because I have just fond memories of it, playing it at arcade, and playing Super Street Fighter 2 on Genesis. It was a whole, I guess it's nostalgia. It's a nostalgia factor that's influencing me on this.
Sweet, yeah, because I grew up playing that on the Super Nintendo, but you know what? I didn't really get the chance of playing those games at the arcade as much competitively. Like, I always played at like either like a liquor store or like a mom and pop liquor store or like a laundromat, but never against anybody. It was always against the computer. I went far. Obviously, I spent more than $1 because I always got whooped by Guy. I always started with Ryu. Ryu was more like the hero to me. He was on the front cover. He was the badass character. I'm still a big Ryu fan, but when it comes to like when I play like Street Fighter 4 or anything, I usually always pick like Mikado or Cody. But like I wish I got really good on like back in the day, and then maybe I could have entered, into the gaming community competitions against these top players. But I was always bad at that game. That game was all mind games. You gotta like poke. I was watching a match against I think it was Mike Watson and John Choi. John Choi was playing as Ryu and Mike Watson as Gayu. So it's back and forth Hadoukens and Sonic Booms. Hadouken, Sonic Boom. So, you got to jump over. As soon as he makes a mistake, it's kind of like chess. I guess you counterattack, you win. But still, freaking Gayu had like, his hit detection was just out there. Couple 3 punches, you got like half of your damage done. Ryu was not as strong as Gayu, but he had a lot of various moves up his sleeve. But if you got his combos right, you can do a lot of damage. But just the way that, like, compared to me, like average people play who are not like really good at the game, it's cool watching playing Street Fighter. But when you watch like the pros play Street Fighter, it's like they play a whole different level. It's like, especially like you're using Ryu and Gayu, it's just back and forth, just Hadouken, Sonic Boom. And you have to approach Gayu in a different way, because if you just jump at him, flash kick right away. There's different moves you gotta do. But I always love the Street Fighter series and the tournaments. I wish I could find like more videos on the tournaments. You know what? I wish they could just bring back Street Fighter 2 tournaments in general. But either bring it like the arcade port, like an arcade version, like the original arcade version, or maybe a Super Nintendo version, or hell, even the freaking the remix edition. It looks nice, but or what's the other one that I liked a lot was the one from the Anniversary Collection. Yeah.
All right. Here I'm gonna get on a subject with the whole arcade scene as well. Thing was, I was a little too small to actually be, exposed to that. Family fun. Although it was around, I would say it's still a little too far away from me. Instead, I would play Street Fighter from time to time at the laundromat of all places, and I don't know, like kids playing hooky from school or whatnot would go there. I don't know, I was maybe 7 or something. It was a bit rough. It was a bit rough. Like I would play, and then some other big kid would push me over, or whatever, and I would actually climb up a bench that was nearby and turn off the machine. But that's a whole different story altogether. I'm gonna talk more about the home ports here. Man, back then I couldn't tell the difference between graphics and sound until maybe a little later. But to me, like, the home ports were my only choice to play Street Fighter, most of the time. Because, I got the Genesis version. I had the 6-button control. It was awesome. My next door neighbor actually had a Street Fighter 2 Special Champion Edition on the Sega Genesis. And, it was great. It was fun. And there was a sense of, it was really competitive. Like, it was awesome. And I would kick his ass, and he wouldn't want to play Street Fighter anymore. But, that's a whole different thing.
Sorry, Dave, let me ask you something. When you ever fought against someone, like, did you kind of, like, stiffen up, get a little nervous? Like, shit, I can lose this one. I mean, I was like that at Family Fun Arcade. Like, when you're playing, especially for me, like, there's times when I did play Street Fighter 2 or Third Strike. But you know how it's on the other side, one side. I mean, you don't face each other. It's kind of like you don't know who's going to play against you. But when someone puts a quarter, new challenger, I'm like, oh, no. If this guy's going to be good or not. But I did get nervous. Like, my hands did get a little sweaty. I don't know if I'm going to win or lose. I don't know if you felt like that, too. I mean, talking about, competition-wise.
All right. I never entered in any competitions. I'll be honest. If I did, I'll probably get my ass kicked. I didn't start playing competitively with other people until Capcom vs. SNK 2. This is 2001. the only Street Fighter I'll ever play is maybe some kids around my age, and at that time I would just mash buttons. I wasn't very skilled or anything. I didn't start getting good at Street Fighter till I got my own copy of Super Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Genesis, and even then I was still mash buttons on the control. I don't think I got good at fighting games until Street Fighter Alpha 3, which was in '98. I think it came out in '98 on the PlayStation. I wish, like you said, you wish you could play competitively back then, had more time. But the thing is that family fun was really far away. My brother would go from time to time, but that was like maybe once or twice a month. And of course, it was always on school nights, and it was this whole thing. I probably didn't go to family fun till '96, which was at the same time as when I saw Killer Instinct in an arcade, and that blew my mind. But that whole thing with Street Fighter 2, it was an experience. Going to school, talking about it, talking about all the combos we would do. We would perform at home. We go to each other's houses, and of course I wasn't part of that loop because I didn't have a solid friend until maybe 6th grade, and by then I think it was, how old was I? Well, by the 6th grade I don't know. I think I was out of the whole Street Fighter thing for a while.
Yeah, like for me, it started with Street Fighter 2 on the SNES. Back, what year was that, David? 91. So yeah, and that's where, originally it came out on arcade first, right? The arcade port. I remember the arcade version. Sorry, like the arcade machine was just this big beast on the front. Like the headliner just had like the Street Fighter 2. Had two fists. It had like yellow and blue, and like white. On the side, it had like on Ryu. On the other side, I think it had like Ken. That was pretty cool. But yeah, no, and then for me too, I lost track on Street Fighter at a certain age, because when I was in high school, when I was in freaking middle school, I'm not really sure what grade I was in when I got really into Street Fighter, like around Super Nintendo, but I think after a while, it just kind of died on me, just because maybe I didn't have friends that talked about it as much, or let alone that wasn't even my copy of Street Fighter 2. It was my cousin's, and I wouldn't really go to his house often, but when I did, like, we would play Street Fighter 2. It was just me and him, or he would just tell me, hey, you can play against the computer, man. But I think around high school, like, I just kind of forgot about Street Fighter. And I'll tell you this, right after, I think, high school, started going to college, kind of met up with this little group, started playing more arcade, started talking about like more like anime, and then I got into back to Street Fighter again. And then I remember going to like this old place in Panorama. It was like a video game store / anime store. X-Zone. That was what it's called. It's cool, man, because they had like freaking import games, they had import anime, they had toys, they had like arcade cabinets. I think they had Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and my favorite, which is Street Fighter 3. But going there, I remember buying the anthology there. I remember buying the anniversary collection. I was just like, I always wanted to go there just to talk about Street Fighter. And then I got back onto that. But then this is what happened. I got a girlfriend and I forgot about video games, whatnot. And then I'm slowly getting back into Street Fighter again. But to me, it's a big part of my life because I grew up with that.
Yeah, I really don't have anything more to say. Well, this has been David from Calling All Gamers.
It's been Chris. Sayonara, suckers.